Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Office Hours. We've been answering your media and tech-related production questions every single day since March 25th, 2020. Courtney Gooden in Los Angeles is our reader today. Courtney, what have we got on tap?
Coming in from Mike Edwards in Brooklyn, New York City. Mike asks, he says, "Morning, everyone. I'm looking to purchasing a desktop NAS for production to store video files, production docs, and potentially edit from. What make and models does the panel recommend? Good, better, best options, please."
Mark Giuliani is going to start us off this morning here. Mark?
Good morning. I like the QNAP models because they're NAS and they connect with different NIC cards. You can buy the 10 gig NIC cards, but they also have Thunderbolt on them. So if you're in the Mac world, you can connect directly to it right next to your desktop and get really fast speeds to move large video files around.
And Jeffrey Powers.
It's really going to depend on how you need to use your NAS. If this is a smaller production, if this is a larger production, as Mark said, something that has a little bit more upgradability will have a lot better options for you on there. I'm actually looking for a NAS for somebody else right now. Usually what I would do is I would build out a computer and run true NAS on it, and then of course choose my hard drives to put into the system. I'm also looking at this right here. This is the TerraMaster F8 SSD plus NAS, which is 8B all SSD NAS, which is, I haven't done anything NVMe related for a NAS, but you have 4 bay options on there. Of course, it really depends if you want 4 bays, 5 bays, 8 bays, 16 bays, or more, which you can always expand a lot of these devices with external hard drives. You want to check on that. But the big thing for me is I need to have something that also creates a virtual desktop so I can log in, so I can do things like file transfers and everything like that.
CJ Covell.
Definitely want to look at what's your use case. Is this mostly just for backup, or are there going to be multiple editors who are going to be hitting the NAS at the same time? If you've got, in terms of drive space, I really like the 5 bay NASs because I feel like I have enough room so I can have one SSD that is going to be more of a working drive that's going to allow me to get at things faster, and then 4 so I can shuffle around as my storage expansion needs. I lean towards Synology just because I don't have as much time to fiddle with something and get it set up. So when I'm looking at that Synology line, a couple things that I look for in particular. Number 1 is the number of drive capacity. Number 2, what's the upgradability? There are certain models as you get into kind of the mid-tier of Synology where you can put a 10 gig NIC in the back in addition to the multiple LAN ports that are already back there. In addition to that, you can also put NVMe storage. I think you can get them with 2 NVMe slots in the bottom of the Synology, and that also makes it great for fast storage.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, on the very large size, you might want to think about things like 45 drives. I know that a couple of people in our community have really liked those. Those are, you put a lot of storage in there to make that actually work and make it accessible. So that's kind of a larger scale. Synology is also, I would say, great for storage. When you say potentially edit from, that's when I worry about a Synology. Typically, we haven't used Synologies that way. Typically, we use Synologies to drop files to and store to. We don't use them to cut from. As soon as we start saying we're going to cut from a file, and usually for me, that's 2 different worlds. When I say I want to edit, and a lot of the files that I do right now are very big. So I worry very quickly about drive speed. So I'm using, for instance, for the immersive stuff that I'm using right now for editing, I'm using a Thunderblade, which is very fast from OWC. And some of the other OWC products are going to be relatively fast for the type of editing that you might want to do. But then they're a little bit more expensive than Synology if you just want to store stuff. So I would really think about separating out your needs and not say that my NAS needs to be something I edit from unless you're going to really, now if you get a NAS that you want to edit from with a lot of storage, you're talking about a lot of money. And so you're better off thinking about what is my average project and have a working online drive that you're going to do the work from. And then when you're done with it, you're going to package it up and put it on the NAS, knowing that it's going to take a little longer to bring it back. That'd be my recommendation.
Next question.
Another question coming in from New York, this time from Chautauqua, New York. Zach Stahlsmith asks, I need to purchase a switch that will be central for sending Dante audio from an Axient unit on the stage, as well as connecting to a second switch via Cat6 in the main production booth for wired internet of a vMix laptop, Behringer X32 via Dante, and PTZ cameras.
Alexander Knight's going to start you off here. Alexander?
Yeah, I just did some recent network upgrades myself, and I ended up getting a Unify USW Pro 24 PoE switch. That's from Ubiquiti. I know some people in the office hours communities have certain opinions about the Unify switches, and they are not fans of them. But that particular line from Unify has a port profile for Dante, including other port profiles for other standards like NDI, which basically takes some of the configuration work out of the equation for you to get you the best possible settings that are going to give you stability for that. And it's working fine for me so far, but I would say in general, if I were to recommend something to somebody else, if you don't have IT staff or you don't have a lot of knowledge of networking, you may want to stick to one line of switch that a lot of people on this panel have suggested in the past, which is the Pro AV line from Netgear, and that's the M4250 AV line of switches, which is this one right here. They're a little more expensive, quite a bit more expensive than the Unify switches there, but again, same concept. They've got presets for Dante on there. And I know a lot of people that have really great results with those, and they say it pretty much just works out of the box, so that's what I would suggest.
Nigel Dessau.
Yeah, I was going to say the Netgear AV line, the 4250s as well. Either way, you're going to have to understand VLANs. And whether you can program VLANs is another question, but you need at least to understand them, because that's a lot of different traffic to combine on one network. And what the M4250s will do for you is simplify the profiles, but you're still going to have some basic networking skills to make them work.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, and Mickey said, two 4250s, their power supplies died for him in the last 2 years, so I'm not sure what's going on there. Also, Mickey suggests Cisco catalysts, which is what Audinate suggests, and I'm going to stack on top of the Cisco Catalyst is I'm just going to repeat that I don't have my Dante share the hardware with everything else. You don't have to do it that way. You can learn a lot about VLANs, or you can just make it simple and just have multiple routes of copper and what needs to be connected to. You have you color the ports on the wall. For me, it was in my last studio, it was green. Green ports are Dante ports. Don't plug anything else into them. It was like that. Those are, and that sits on top of Dante copper, and that's it. That's all it does, and there's nothing else plugged into it. And I know that you can do it another way. I'm just saying it's so simple. And if you value time, it's a really simple way to make sure that all your stuff works.
Let's go to our next question.
Next one comes in from Hasmuk Gajar in Cape Town, South Africa. Hasmuk says he has two Blackmagic Pocket Cinema cameras, 6K Pros. I need a third camera. It must support SDI and be mounted as needed on a teleprompter as a webcam. Staying with Blackmagic, which model makes sense and not breaking the bank? Suggestions?
Alex Lindsay's going to help you out.
The reality is that you're going to want the Blackmagic 6K Pro or 6K with a G2 with a bidirectional SDI converter. You want to match the other two. You don't want to start getting different chips, because now they're all going to have different color profiles, and you're going to spend a lot of time messing with that. If you're going to use something in the Blackmagic line you want to spend less, then the next thing down would be probably the Micro Studio, but that's a 4/3 chip, and it also is a different color science than the 6Ks, and so you will have to think about building a profile that matches all of those together. Because you have the G1 and there is a G2, you may still need to put up against a color chart and spend a little time building LUTs that are going to tie all those cameras together. Don't try to shade them into place. You can shade things into place when you need to do something quickly. If you're building an install and you have these cameras and these lenses and you're going to use the same thing all the time, and have them all set that way, spend the time to use a LUT to match them all up so that they all look exactly the same. It might take you a day to get that working, and then you'll never have to think about it again. but you won't be sitting there playing with all the colors. That'd be my recommendation is just to go ahead and get another 6K Pro. There's not a lot of other things at that price point that you're going to get that are going to match the 6Ks well or easily.
Courtney wanted to weigh in on this. Courtney?
Just a reminder, too, that if this one's going to be behind a teleprompter glass, that the teleprompter glass is going to shift the color a little bit. So don't use the same LUT from the other two cameras because it probably won't match up. So create a custom LUT for the one that's going to be behind the glass in the teleprompter. Also, of course, make sure you get a camera that you can remotely operate, remotely control, so you can control the focus, the LUT, the color balance, the exposure, etc. Because once it gets inside that teleprompter hood, it's impractical to, if you don't have a camera operator, it's impractical to get in there and make those adjustments interactively.
When Alex mentioned Mickey's contribution, he's coming in through Mukana, Mickey is. That's our constant running chat during this show. There's a lot of fascinating information there, and it's really a great extension. So if you want to get into that, you have to kind of be in the show system. You want to go to the connection, which is officehours.global/join. Once you've done that, if you haven't before, we'll send you an email within a day or so. And then once you've done that, you can get into the system and ask, vote on, and discuss the show's questions. The voting is very important because whatever has the most votes is what we get to early and spend the most time discussing. So that's how kind of you help program the show. Let's go to our next question.
Next one comes in from St. Paul, Minnesota. Tommy Shantz asks, in order for my companion to work with my Steamdeck ATEM Mini Pro, I need to do a restore and load a previous session. I have it on autosave and to start on last setup. What's going on and how can I fix it?
Jeffrey Powers is going to help you out here. Jeffrey?
That sounds very interesting. It's something that I have never run across. Usually if there's a connection issue, it's IP based. Because you're going from Steamdeck to computer to the ATEM. So I would first of all try and assign a different IP address to that ATEM and see if it follows the problem. If it doesn't, then you might want to look at your router and see if you have any special checkboxes set up to possibly block unwanted IP addresses, or maybe another computer is trying to take over that IP address and therefore it's having a conflict, which you won't see because it doesn't have warnings like that. The other thing I would do is instead of restore, just basically knock out. I'm assuming you backed up and now you're doing the restore that way. But if you haven't done it this way, I would highly suggest just knocking out the ATEM out of Companion and then update to the latest version and then bring it back in and try it again, see what happens. And then finally check your cables. That's always a good answer to make sure that you're not having some problems there.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Henderson, Texas. Jeff Veely asks, would anyone on the panel be willing to discuss prompt tips and demonstrate how to create or edit photorealistic plates and mockups with Midjourney from two camera angles? So
you're in luck. Alex is here, and Alex does a lot of work in Midjourney.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to do that one yet. I don't know what the mockup is of. So one thing I will say, my first tip is that you really have to be very specific about what you want to get out of this. So I don't quite understand what you're trying to mock up. So maybe rephrase that question and tell us, like, what are a photorealistic plate? Now, to me, a plate and a mock-up are two different things. So I'm not sure exactly what the target is there.
Courtney, you have some thoughts?
I'm by no means a Midjourney expert. I don't even have any professional versions. But I tell you, I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos the last couple of days. And I've seen a whole lot of people use the new Gemini Nano Banana. If you look for Nano Banana, that's the working title. It's now available for free use from Google. And a lot of people have been generating great-looking still images in Midjourney. And the thing that Nano Banana does beats everybody else at the moment is creating a new point of view of that same scene. So you can set up a scene of two people, let's say, at a sidewalk restaurant, front-on wide shot, and then say, give me a tighter close-up from over the shoulder of the woman to the man. And it maintains the Nano Banana for doing that prompt of changing the camera angle of a single still that is fed to it, it does a great job of maintaining consistency, unlike many other of the generative AI image generators whose consistency varies every time you roll it. It changes. So consistency from one angle to the next is not great. But I've seen these demonstrations using Nano Banana, and it keeps the wardrobe the same, the glasses, the faces look identical. And if you feed it an image and say, change the camera angle to this or a close-up, or, it makes up stuff that's out of the frame that melds perfectly into the frame. So it does a pretty good job of doing that. So take a look at that. Nano Banana, it's available from Google's Gemini 2.5, I think, on their websites.
Alex, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I was going to say Nano Banana. That I didn't bring that up because it wasn't in the question, but I do agree that Nano Banana is the thing that a lot of us are paying attention to. I don't know it well enough to sit there and demo it right now, but it is something that I'm paying a lot of attention to. It does look like you can do. It's taking it kind of to a next step. We are going to see a lot of. I think music videos are going to hit AI pretty quickly here, just because. I was watching a couple music videos over the weekend, and really thinking about the fact that these aren't specifics. I mean, when we think about movies, I think movies are pretty safe for a little while, because it's hard to get a great performance out of humans, and so getting it out of AI might take a little while to do it for 2 hours straight, or an hour straight, or even 22 minutes straight. But I think that when you look at music videos and a lot of these things, they're very ethereal. They're very kind of, I'm just showing you glances of things. I think people are going to start making more of those pretty soon. So and now that the tools are getting to a point where they have some consistency, like this is my lead singer, this is my this is my whatever. I think that you're going to see more of that happening in the next 6 months.
I saw a really interesting story on one of the big news shows over the weekend, and they were talking about the cost of query between the GPT-style text things and these creations. I was shocked at asking a prompt question on a text base uses this much energy, putting it into the video system and asking for something like that. It was orders of magnitude more power required on the server side, and so many people are doing this that they were just questioning whether or not we're going to get ourselves in a bit of trouble as these become more and more and more popular in terms of overrunning the available energy supplies. I don't know much about this, but
there's a thing of fake it till you make it, and a lot of this stuff is that our entire every major technological or big business that has created a rush like this, everybody rushes to it. Everything is very inefficient. And then what happens is that A, it becomes more efficient, and B, about 90% of the market falls away. So everyone's throwing money at this right now and talking about it. But if you look at railroads or oil or the internet or many all these other things, there was this huge gold rush. Everybody ran in. If you looked at, the railroads, people were making railroads that were like 160-mile piece of it. And there were hundreds of railroads, and then there were 3. And then there were 2, and so, but if, you can't look at I get that people who write articles don't do a lot of business models very often. So they don't look back at history and go, well, this has happened in every single time there's been a rush. People are super inefficient just to take the ground, and then they get real efficient, and then things change. So I think that we're going to find that this is going to change, or the business model is going to change. It's going to get more expensive, like VO has. So it won't be free. Right now, it's free because that's how you get everybody in. But at some point, when you figure it out, you start charging. You start charging $300 a unit, and the professionals stay with it, and everybody else falls away.
Yeah, it's interesting, though. I had a friend who used to buy power. That was his job. He bought interstate power from the big energy suppliers, and he kept talking a lot about surge capacity. And I'm just wondering whether or not they're going to create so much surge capacity during this process. And then what happens if your point becomes absolutely true and the need for that surge capacity drops to a very small fraction of itself? How much was invested in creating this capacity that is not going to be used in the long run?
Our network is so underserved by electricity that there is no way that we could we wouldn't need to worry about going down. We have to worry about going up. There was a really interesting, Mark Andreessen was talking, I was watching something over the weekend, and he just said, there's a lot of things in the world that would get fixed if we just built a bunch of nuclear power plants, just a whole bunch of them, and just did this big kind of space race thing and just put them all out there, because you wouldn't have to buy any more oil or dig up anything out of the ground and everything else, and it could all be done in a decade, but we keep on doing what we do because you can't get that many people to organize around that. That's the biggest thing with any business, is you can't get enough humans to organize around one concept. So you can't really be efficient because they won't agree.
Yeah, it's weird. I keep driving by that nuclear power plant when I go to Los Angeles every time. It's sitting there, been sitting there for decades.
Waiting.
It'll be interesting to see what happens over the course of time. None of us know. Next question.
Next question from Craig Kadoki in Toronto, Canada. How do we feel about Bose purchasing the McIntosh Group?
Let's see. Nigel's going to start us off here. Nigel?
Well, so it happened last year, so it's a while ago. And of course, Bose is an interesting story. I was watching a great YouTube video the other day about the history of Bose and Omar Bose and how he created that. And those of us who are old enough used to love wandering around the Bose store. And of all the areas that they've been successful, they're very successful in cars. That obviously their headphones became the base standard for a long time. The place they've really not done very well is in the home anymore, with the Bluetooth speakers, and they've had all of those things, but they've really not created any market. So they're trying to fill in that gap by going after McIntosh, who owns Sonos Faber. I have some Sonos Faber speakers. They are not connected to a McIntosh amp, because those McIntosh amps are about $50,000 each, and you need one per channel. By the way, if you'd like to spend a few $1 million, this is the great Sonos Faber McIntosh place used to have a place in Soho. I don't know whether you can quite see it from the pictures. The speakers either side are like 8 or 9 feet tall. They were great. The problem was they were about a third of $1,000,000 before you put the amps on. So I don't know Bose is going to damage what they're doing. I think they're looking to get back into the audio at home. And of course, those people who are audiophiles have always been slightly dismissive of Bose because they didn't like the science. I have lovely Sonos Faber speakers. They're connected to an NAD amp, Canadian amp. Works great. I don't think they'll do any damage. Sidebar, interesting thing about Bose, of course, which is still a $3 billion business, is the majority of Amar's shares went to MIT. So MIT actually owns the majority of Bose.
Interesting. I remember listening to my friend who was a stereo shop owner saying, yeah, I got some people who want to hear the third violinist turn his pages. I'm not sure I want that much clarity. CJ, you wanted to get in on this?
Yeah, I think there's actually a benefit to some of these legacy hi-fi brands getting scooped up by larger organizations, mostly because the folks who are putting stereos in their home and spending a lot of time and money tweaking on that it's a dwindling population. So when you look at somebody like Bose acquiring McIntosh, that means that McIntosh is now part of a bigger boat, and they don't need to exist on their own. If they want to have some freedom and investment to change their strategy a little bit, they now have the room to do that because they're not having to bet the company every single time. Last year, we saw Harman buying Sound United, which included Denon, Marantz, Boston Acoustics, Bowers & Wilkins, Bang & Olufsen, JBL, Klipsch, Polk. And it's all these legacy names that people are, have a certain amount of reverence. That they're thinking, hey, this is sacred ground. But you have to remember, if the market for these companies is shrinking, then there needs to be some sort of efficiency by being part of a large organization that maybe can support them from a cash flow perspective that keeps the whole thing healthy. Now, what they are buying is intellectual property, talent. They're able to share IP between those brands, and now all of a sudden you're seeing maybe some innovation that before was locked behind something, now able to show up in a car or in a consumer product. So for the health of hi-fi and for maybe getting some better technology into the consumer goods, I'm all about it.
Courtney, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, a lot of the purchases we're seeing these days of these, legacy companies is all about the trademark and the name recognizability of the Bose and McIntosh names. That's worth a lot of money in the marketplace, even if they go a completely different direction as far as, design of and manufacturing of their equipment. It may be made in China for all we know. For example, recently, we were talking the other day about Hasselblad. And, do you know that Hasselblad is now owned by DJI? So the Hasselblad cameras are all now made in China.
Maybe we'll get media format on drones.
It's the value of that trademark and the reputation of the old company that are trading on a lot of these new companies now. So it has value there. Whether or not they maintain the design concepts, of the original manufacturers is to be seen.
Don't forget, we have special shows in the evening often now, and today is Monday. That means Extra Hours takes place tonight. 6 p.m. Pacific is the general starting time.
It doesn't.
It doesn't?
Labor Day off. Yeah, I shouldn't have gone.
Oh, you're taking Labor Day off. Okay,
I don't know if it went
thank
out
you.
in the email or not, but we'll let everybody know. Yeah, there's no Extra Hours tonight.
No Extra Hours tonight. All right. Then you'll have to wait for one of our other shows like Thursday night where we have the rundown with David Paskin. Let's go on to our next question.
You have to pay everybody double today for Extra Hours because it's a union holiday. Douglas Carmichael asks, the Eventide H90 can support instrument or line level on both inputs and outputs. If I'm connecting a synth with unbalanced outputs to the input of the H90, would I select line or instrument? And here's a link.
Alexander Knight's going to start us off. Alexander?
Yeah, this is a cool trend that I've seen with a lot of pedals now. In fact, the universal audio guitar pedals also support both line and high impedance instrument input. So no, in this case specifically for you with a synthesizer, an outboard piece of gear like that, you'd be using line level. There's a very, very big difference between the impedance of those two, and line level kind of sits in the middle of the hierarchy between mic, line, and instrument, or what's sometimes shortened as high-Z. So you're going to want to make sure you set that to line because otherwise you won't get much signal out of that.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just simply a signal boost that for the device. So you could try it back and forth and see what happens, but you're probably going to get clipping in certain instruments, and it really doesn't matter if you're talking about the balanced or unbalanced cable. There, it's all about the instrument and how it can push signal into the pedal. Same thing on the output, how the pedal can go to wherever you're taking it to, and how if it needs a little bit of extra push there.
Next question.
Another question from Zach Stallsmith in Chautauqua, New York. Zach says, I'd like to build a LUT to match my PTZOptics and Lumens cams that are coming into vMix via NDI. How can I get started with this process so I can have all my camera feeds look the same?
Alex Lindsay's going to help you out. Alex?
I don't know how to do it with those cameras. So specifically, what we would do typically for cameras, and I just don't know enough about the PTZOptics and Lumens. You got to be able to load the LUT somewhere. So a LUT is a lookup table. It's saying take this color space and go to this color space, or take this color and go to that color. And the issue is that you got to be able to load it into either inline or on the camera or on the receiver, preferably on the camera. Is where you want to do it. So I don't know if whether these take those or not. But if they do, let's just assume that a camera takes a LUT. The problem is that a lot of times you do on NDI. The advantage that we get with mechanical, like SDI or HDMI, is that we can put it into a box, and in that box it can have a LUT. It can just say whatever's passing through me, add this LUT. And so we do that a lot. And so once you go NDI, I don't know. And the problem is NDI will now compress it. So it really, if the cameras don't support a LUT at the camera and you're using NDI, you probably can't do this. Like I wouldn't probably go down this path because you're going to be trying to add a color transform to a compressed signal. I don't recommend that. So anyway, I think that'd be the challenge that you have with doing it with cameras that don't have that. If they support it, what you want to do is you're going to take you basically take the camera, you capture an image of it, and it can be, the image that you capture can actually be compressed. It's kind of a funny problem, but you can take a compressed image and compress it. or take it, just grab it from vMix or whatever, grab that frame, take it into something like Resolve. Now you turn all the LUTs off, turn all the color control off, turn everything off, just get the raw. And I don't know whether these ones are capable of doing that. So that's the problem, is that typically what we would do is go to the log or the raw output, let it go through the system, grab that image, take it into Resolve, and in Resolve you're going to do a color transform. You're going to say, I'm coming from this to this, and there's not really any setting for these, so you may have to make that up a little bit. But anyway, you're going to color transform it until you like the first camera. That camera, you get the nodes where you want them, you get them color corrected so that it looks exactly the way you want it, and then you are going to. So once you have that, you can then right click on it and say save a LUT. Or save cube file, I think, or export LUT. And so you have save out a cube file. Typically, you got to look at whether it's a 17 or 33, 66, point cube file, depending on what the camera can handle. Then you are going to load that into the camera, and then that's going to take over the color transform. Now the issue is that on the next one, what you're going to do is this is why I use a chart. Is that, and I use a Chroma Demont chart, but you can get other ones. The next one you have to set. You take the same image and you want to try to get it framed up almost exactly the same way with the same lighting. You can't do this outside. You can't do it with the windows. It has to be a closed door, closed space with lights, that are going to be diffused. There can't be any highlights. You can't be at an angle. You can't this. This is a very specific thing. If you don't follow all the instructions, it won't work. So then what you're going to do is you're going to take the second one, and you're going to set it on top of the first one as a layer, and then you're going to set it to difference, and it's going to turn gray and white and all kinds of other things because it's not the same as the bottom layer. You correct that until it turns almost black with maybe some little edges and stuff like that. And you got to corner pin it so it's stretched right over top of it. And you don't have to get all the little edges right. You just have to. That's why I use a color chart. It's the main colors that you care about. Anyway, so you get those and you correct that one to the other one. So you're matching the second camera to the first camera with a LUT. And then you save that out as a cube and load it in. Now, again, I don't know if these cameras can do that. But I can't. But this is the way with larger cameras, this is the way we do it. And we'll either load the LUTs into the cameras themselves. If the cameras don't take LUTs, we will put them in like GoPros or something like that. We'll put them into the HDMI to SDI converters. In them, a lot of the Blackmagic ones all now have, you can load a LUT into it to be processed on the way through. So we have a tendency to do those, to kind of pull those all together and have them look as close to each other as possible.
Jeffrey Powers, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, as for the PTZOptics cameras, I don't know about the brand new ones that just came out, but the other ones, they do not have anything where you can put a LUT into. And Mickey says in the chat that you might want to look at a LUT box. But as Alex said, you're basically putting a layer on top of a layer, and it doesn't always look good in the situation. I'd also try and find out what type of sensors they have in each of the cameras. I believe PTZOptics uses the Panasonic sensors. Which ones use Sony sensors? You might be able to find the color palette that comes with those sensors and see if there's a match, an easier match from there. But even with the settings inside the PTZ cameras, it's just basically a red or blue change inside of there. So getting it as close as possible is usually your best bet. But to get them to match perfectly is going to be almost impossible.
And the color box, by the way, is the best way to do it. Like Mickey had suggested, is an AJA color box. It's also about 20 times more expensive than the AJA version, or the Blackmagic version. You get a lot better controls than you have there. But given the cameras that you have, and given that you're using NDI, I don't know how you use NDI through a LUT box.
I also have a URL for you if you want to get a quick question into the show sometime. I've just popped up the QR code in the bottom of the screen. That takes you to askofficehours.global. Just type that into your web browser, askofficehours.global. And if you're watching the show, it's a real simple process. You can use the QR code to shoot it with your phone or something like that. That'll allow you to get a question in. That'll go into the pool. And those are persistent. So that question will stay overnight into the next group if you'd like it to, other than using the regular Office Hours question and answer system. Next question.
Next one comes in from Noonan, Georgia. Tony Mobley says he has a virtual house of worship at an in-person event on the land that the church will be built on. Is there one device that can be used as a web camera, an outside camera, and in the church once it is built?
The universal Swiss Army knife of cameras. Alex, what do you think?
iPhone. I mean, that's the closest you're going to get to something that can do all the things that you're asking it to do. So I don't think that's the way you're going to end up working. I will say that, especially that you have the thing that I would really think about right now as I build a house of worship is how does that house of worship continue to support the virtual nature of what you have right now, as well as be something that people can meet in. And so really think about, as you build a house, if you're building one from the ground up, sorry, I would really consider how you're going to build it so that you can have fully online services as well as in-person services, and it can switch easily. And that has to do with acoustics, has to do with framing, so on and so forth. Just think about that as you build it. But as far as something that goes in and out, David Brady is talking about Amiibo Start, which is about $450. I don't know if you're trying to keep it on the whole time, or whether what you're saying is, I want to use it as a webcam, I want to use it as an outside camera, I want to use it as I want it to stay in the same position. I don't know exactly what you're using it for there, but that's our guess.
There you go. Next question.
Next one comes in from Jeff Veely in Henderson, Texas. What budget-friendly LED lights would you purchase for lighting a 13-foot by 8-foot green screen with fixtures mounted from above on a bar, roughly 4 feet from the screen?
We're going right back to Courtney to take care of the beginning of this one. Courtney?
Well, Jeff, I've always believed, I like, for value for what you get, I kind of like the Neewers. And they have this RGB WW panel that is like 168. If you were to buy an aperture panel the same size that's RGB WW, and so you could use these as, in the green mode, you can control them. They're DMX controllable, I believe. For $168, they have the built-in barn doors, which is important to keep your spill, especially if you're going to be hitting that green screen with green LED light, to keep the spill off of everything except for the green screen backing that you're pointing them down at. And it has a nice broad panel to spread the light out, so it'll be easier to cover a larger area with something like this. And, of course, they're budget price, so you could afford 3 or 4 of them across the length of that panel and have them overlapping, and then barn door them so that green light coming out of the panels doesn't spill onto your person's, on the back of the person that's in front of the screen.
Alex Lindsay.
I mean, I was just doing some green screen, and what did I pull out to do the green screen? In fact, we're moving them over to my kid's school is KinoFlow 400s, the KinoFlow 4x4s. They are old. They are inexpensive. You can buy a set of them, I think, for like $600. And they still work great. like they're big and soft. And they'll burn up a little bit more energy than the LEDs. You actually probably only need 2x4s to do most green screens. The 4x4 is oftentimes more than you need there. You want something big and long. So you need it to be 4 feet long, typically. I mean, the little one, what happens is when people put them up high, we put them to the side of the green screen that we want. You can't put them across the top. The problem you're going to have is that you're going to have a big gradient that goes from the top to the bottom. It's almost impossible to not have that be there. And so really think about, if you're going to do something that's a cove, then you're going to have to put them across the top. And even then, still big, large sources still work better than most other sources. So you want to think about things that are long and large and, big and soft to do that. And you need to get, the cove needs to be bigger. I will say that a lot of people with not a lot of budget try to do coves, and that's the rocks that their ship ends up underwater. So like those are like trying to do a 90-degree angle or a U or something like that when you don't have the budget to make it big enough to do, or you don't have whatever, is really a place that you just spend a lot of time and effort and money, and it never turns out. Like, it never looks very good. So really think about if you I don't know what you have planned or what you've built, but I can tell you that if you decide we're never going to show someone's feet, and you decide we're just going to do one wall, you will reduce the complexity of your green screen by 95%. Like, literally, it's just making those two decisions that we're going to have one wall and we're not going to show their feet. and everything gets really easy really fast because now you can do really, really good green screens, and it doesn't, you're not chasing all these other things. But people don't know that, and they see the things on YouTube with the little thing that comes out, that people can stand on and everything else. And you can do that, but don't build your whole kit around that, because it's really, if you don't have the budget or time, it's really painful to do that.
Next question.
Next question comes from Tim Snyder in Louisville, Kentucky. Does anyone have any recommendations for a task list templates or a checklist for event production? A place to start is what I'm looking for.
It's going to be a little problematic because every event is a little bit different, but Alex Lindsay is going to take a shot at task lists.
I guess the problem it really is that I don't know if I have a task list for it. We do have things that we're looking for, but usually what happens is that we're having a conversation with the client about what they're doing, and then we're building that task list, and a lot of it comes from experience. I don't know if I have the problem always with templates is that they don't quite fit whatever you're doing, and then they become, you're either asking for things that don't exist or not asking for all the right things. And I have to admit that the way that I approach it is very responsive of, as they're talking, I'm writing down all the questions and doing everything else. I mean, there's obviously things we want to know. When are you doing it? Where? What's the egress? There's things that we do ask for, but I don't know if I have a comprehensive tech list that I would use for any of these things. We usually talk about it before the meeting with the client for about a half an hour, build out a list based on what they've sent us, and then have the conversation.
Courtney?
I'm amazed. I'll go into Copilot or use ChatGPT or whatever LLM of your choice and just specifically ask it for stuff like this. I've had it build checklists and PDFs, fillable PDF forms for this kind of stuff. I just ask Copilot for what you're asking for, and this is kind of what it came up with, a video production checklist template. And here's for pre-production, and here's then the production, and then for a checklist for post-production, and then distribution and promotion. So pick your checklist. But you might experiment around with some AI because it's great at creating templates for, and mention the type of production, whether it's going to be a video, an auction or a house of worship presentation or whatever the program's going to be. And it does an amazing job of creating these checklists and comes up with a lot of things. Maybe it hallucinates them that you may not have ever thought of to put on that checklist.
Next question.
Next one comes in from Ian Alfred in London Town. Are there any OMT hardware input encoders?
And Alex is going to help you here.
OMT, Open Media Transport, is brand new. So I think that vMix, and I can't remember who the other one, there's one other organization that's really kind of pushing this down the path. It's probably pretty early to have anything that you want to use. Yeah, Open Media Transport is pretty early on. It's pretty, I wouldn't spend much time on this for another, and this is the problem that they have, is people like me will go, hey, I'm going to check back in 36 months and see if you've made any progress. If you don't make any progress in 36 months, I'm going to write you off. If you do make progress, I'll have a piece of hardware somewhere that I'll start testing. But for most production people, I know that they're desperate to not have to pay licensing. They don't want to pay NDI. They don't want to, this is all about companies trying to avoid licensing. And there's other reasons to do it. Ravenna, for instance, gives you a lot more flexibility than Dante. There's other reasons to have open source and open-ended and systems. But for these companies that are making this, the primary thing is to not pay NDI licensing. And so I think that the problem is they're solving a problem for themselves and not for their customers. Customers just want it to work. And so I think that's and they won't think about, like, Ravenna is a good example. The only people that use Ravenna are really, really large facility, really large, like the Olympics uses Ravenna, right? That kind of thing. And other things use Ravenna. If you're a small organization and you try to use Ravenna, I mean, you have to do like math on a napkin to figure out how to set things up. I mean, it's insane because there's no product manager realizing that we should make this more available to a wider group of people. And so OMT, I think, is going to, I give it a 50-50, give it a 30-70 chance of succeeding at best. We should really check in. I know we got excited and we talked about it because there was a bunch of announcements, but we should really check in like 3 years. And so when we've done our 3,000th episode, then we should check in again and see if OMT is still around.
There we go. We're almost to 2,000.
Yeah.
That happens very close now. I love the chat today. Somebody said, hey, AI forgot to feed the crew on Courtney's checklist. And then so he popped back in. Humans don't matter to AI.
AIs don't eat, so they never think of that.
Exactly. Why would it know that? Next. Oh, wait a second. I wanted to get this in. If you value what we do here, there are a few ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can volunteer if you'd like and get to know some great people. Go to officehours.global/volunteer. You can get more information about that, or you can make a donation if you'd like to. We are a 501c3. You can donate at officehours.global/donate. All right, next question.
Next question comes in from Evan Troxel in Talent, Oregon. You just got all the talent there. Freeman Group, that owns Rode, Mackie, and so on, has recently announced a new partnership with Dante for next-generation products. Any thoughts from the panel? He has a link there to the story.
Of course, we have thoughts. Alexander Knight's got to start us off.
Yeah, I read the press release between Freeman Group and Audinate. I think it's cool to bring something that is not really a consumer technology down to the level where maybe the average person buying, for example, I could see a future where Rode releases a new Rodecaster podcast mixer and it has a Dante chip in it, and you can pass multi-channel audio on your home network, which is cool. But I think that it opens up a can of worms for Rode as a consumer product company that I think for that many people to be able to just have Dante on their home network with whatever router their ISP provided with no VLANs and things running amok there, I can see a lot of support issues. But hey, it's cool. I think bringing that technology to the masses is really cool if they can make it work somehow.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I mean, this gets back into, kind of ties into what we were talking about before, is that Dante, of course, is the what many use for how they're transporting. So this is pretty obvious for the Freeman Group to go down that path, given that they're all in Australia. I think that Freeman Group's in Australia as well, so it all makes sense.
Next question.
Next question comes in from Jeff Cohen in Miami Beach, Florida. Jeff asks, when using DaVinci Resolve's transcription, has anyone ever managed to use the delete silences button with usable results? In my experience, the edits are horribly unusable, chopping words abruptly, mid-sentence, etc. No settings for threshold, etc.
Alex, have you had experience with this?
No, because I tried it once and it didn't work very well, and then I was like, okay, I'll come back to it in a year. You know, that's the hard part with production is that you can, someone is going to try it. You're trying it, Jeff. But I don't really, and I have to admit that I don't do a lot of, I don't do a lot of auto editing. So like if I want to cut something out, I cut it out. If I don't have the program go through and knock a bunch of stuff out for me, because I just rarely find that it works the way I thought it was going to work. I tried every once in a while going, let's see how this works. And I'm like, this isn't very good. And I go back to what I was doing before. And
Jeffrey
that's with every
Powers.
platform, not just with Resolve.
Jeffrey Powers.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It doesn't matter what platform it is. It's definitely across the board. Any of these editors are not going to do a great job on the pauses. I'm finding that the filler words are a better option to cut out without losing a lot of stuff. But it's really also going to depend on the audio that's recorded. If we're doing something like an office hours, nice clean audio and video, then it's going to be a lot better to take out those pauses than if you're like let's say, doing a boom microphone on a wedding or anything like that where external noises can be everywhere. And of course, if there's extra processing that's put into the microphone on the record just to get out those extra sounds, it just gets really confused. And so when you take out pauses, for me, when I do videos, there's always going to be a point where I'm pausing or I'm not talking while I'm showing something, and I don't want that pause to come out. So a lot of times I will not use the pause, but every time I've used the pause, I definitely backed out one and just did it manually.
Alexander?
It's definitely a feature that needs a little more time in the oven to bake. But some of the other AI features, like the AI multicam stuff, I've been using it since the Resolve 20 beta, and it's very, very impressive. Not perfect. Again, with this technology, proceed with caution. If you're using it on your own projects, you should still review all the edits that it's making and make tweaks, because it's not going to be 100% perfect. It may delete something that you don't want it to delete. So be really careful with that.
And Guy Cochran in the chat said, noted, run it through Adobe Podcast first. It'll absolutely blow your mind. He's got a link to the product there. So that's another alternative for you. Next question.
Next one comes in from Douglas Carmichael. Douglas asks, the Xcode 26 will be including GPT-5 and Claude directly in development environment. What does this mean for developer training curricula like CodeWithChris?
Jeffrey Powers, you want to speculate?
Yeah, we've got a lot of AI coming in to create code. I've created code on GPT. I haven't done it on Gemini, but here it's fairly straightforward. Whether you're making WordPress plugins, whether you're making Apple devices for Apple iOS or whatnot, everybody thinks that, I'm calling them AI kitties that are bringing in stuff. The biggest problem with like ChatGPT that I found in creating code like that is it doesn't remember what it did. So if you say put in part 1, put in part 2, and it forgets to put in part 1, then you say what about part 1? It puts in part 1, and then part 2's disappeared completely. GPT, and that's crossed through GPT-5, so there's going to be a lot working there. As for developer training, we're always going to need developer training because ultimately these types of codes are going to evolve. They're going to make new versions of the codes. And so you're going to have people that understand the code from soup to nuts to be able to make those changes. And then once they start creating the new versions of the code and bringing in programs, then the AI programs can learn on that and then bring it back in. And there's always going to be people that are just completely going to ignore AI and create the code from scratch because their brains work in that way.
CJ.
Now, I've used the GPT-5 integration directly within Xcode as part of the macOS 26 beta. It is really a game changer when every time you're having a conversation back and forth with one of these AI helpers, if it has your entire code base to look at, it's not just looking at a tiny snippet of the problem, it's seeing everything. Now you have to be a little bit more careful because if you're giving it carte blanche edit access, that also means that it can wipe some stuff out. But as a non-programmer who now has a half a dozen little programs that I've made and one big program that I've made that are improving productivity for people on a daily basis, the value of this is incredible, and the friction between me having an idea and me having something deployed has completely shrunk to almost nothing. So we've got this explosion of creativity. The challenge is we're going to start to need to think about maintenance, and that's where people like CodeWithChris or other coding coaches online can help us understand as non-programmers what are the basic structuring and ball handling skills that we need so that when we're building something that it's not a house built on sand, and that as we're trying to get a solution that's going to work in 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, that it's still going to be okay to maintain. And maybe at some point I make my app and then I bring in a real programmer and say, hey, this is what I needed to do, but do it the right way.
Alex Lindsay.
I think that the problem, I think there's going to be a huge influx of people who are programming without learning any code. And the problem really is that if you're going to do the basics of coding, you're going to find that the AI will do it. You doing it with the AI. And a lot of it has to, like, whether it can handle large code. I talk to programmers now that are doing pretty large code bases, but the way that they structure it is in a way that has the process doesn't hallucinate nearly as much. And a lot of it has to do with token management. A lot of it has to do with cross-checking things. A lot of it has to do with checking in sections of code as opposed to doing all the code at one time. So there's a lot of things that happen there that are starting to kind of build up. I think that in the same way that I think that right now, the way that we've been writing code, it doesn't mean that we don't need people that know how to do that, but a huge influx of coding and everything else, and a lot of the things that we've been wanting to fix is going to be done with AI, and you're gonna build those smaller apps with AI, and you're going to be able to do the correction. We're at the very, very beginning of this hockey stick, so I think that I don't think I would either decide to take a curriculum, like a full curriculum. I don't know if the CodeWithChris kind of thing makes as much sense anymore. If I'm just trying to figure out how to build my next little app, I'm just going to use AI. If I'm going to decide that I want to be a great programmer, I'm going to take a long, full-time year or two understanding structure and everything else that's necessary to make that actually happen. And I think that that's still valuable. But I think that the vast majority of programming that's going to happen over the next very short period of time, is going to be really, it's going to come down to a lot of people building a lot of stuff with AI. And it was garbage code at the beginning. I'm talking to programmers right now that just say that it's as clean as anything that a junior programmer would do. It's sure there's there's things that they would do differently, but it's not what it was 6 months ago or a year ago. And so I think that I know I'm working on a couple app ideas right now that I'm playing with that I'm kind of surprised at how much I can do and how quickly I can do it. And I've shown it to some folks that think that it's about as good as that they would write as well, and that's all using some of the integrations with Xcode, and it's pretty interesting.
As you can imagine, there's a lot of chatter in Mocana about this. It's an interesting discussion today. Next question.
Next question comes in from Alexander Knight here on the panel and in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia. I don't have a color checker yet. I created a LUT in Resolve by eye and liked how it looked. I used recorded footage that I made on my Lumix GH5s in Vlog. I exported in Resolve as Panasonic format. It looks awful when I loaded it in, and I look sick. What are your thoughts?
Well, now you have a sick plug-in. Alex Lindsay, your thoughts?
Number one is I don't know how you would do this without a color checker. I don't like when I say, we should do this with LUTs without some kind of color chart to shoot. I literally would have no reference point. The problem is that if you have just an image, you're not seeing the full breadth of the image, and you're not going to know what you did really. So without some kind of card, it doesn't have to be a Demont chart. It can be one of the color checkers from X-Rite or whatever, but you need something there to get you into the ballpark across the entire process. And I guess, Alex, the question I have for you is that, so you explain this. I know you put it in text, but explain what you did there.
Yeah, so what I did was I set my camera into vlog mode. I recorded test footage, like 30 seconds or so, and then I just imported it into Resolve. I started messing around with the color page, and then it was just one node, and then right-click, export as Panasonic LUT, loaded it onto the SD card, and I'm looking at it on my monitor, and it looks horrible. It looks nothing at all like how it looks in Resolve.
Very, very saturated? Or does it look off?
You know what? It's the skin tone that looks off. Like I look kind of yellow, and there's like red around my eyes, and it looks off, really off.
Because it sounds like you're double LUTing somewhere. Like it sounds like you've got two LUTs going on at the same time. Like usually when someone says it looks a little off, well, that's color transfer. Now the other thing is that when you bring it into Resolve, you don't want to use one node to do everything, because you're gonna lose a lot of control. You're gonna have one node that's your color transform, one that you start to work with. You start adding a node for almost every operation that you're doing. As you pull all of it together, it's very hard for you to have enough control to make the corrections that you need. So I would recommend that first. And the first one should be a color transform. So you're going to go in there and you're going to say, this is where I'm starting. and this is where I'm going. That's the only thing that LUT should do. Is that.
Sense.
Then you start, okay, now I want to do some exposure control, I want to do some color control, I want to do some saturation control. Each one of those is its own node. So you can turn them on and off and have control of them and make sure that they're doing what they want. And then you're going to figure out what it's going to go back out to, as you put it there, because it's got to go, has an output as well. So
Vicar in the chat says for me to improve my diet, and I promise you it has nothing to do with that.
Oranges and lemons.
Courtney, you want to weigh in?
It sounds like you're getting vlog back out, and that may be what's happening here, because vlog will look washed out with very little blacks, and everything will look green because it doesn't, it unapplies the debayering filter. So maybe when you're telling it to output, I don't know exactly, because I'm not sure. I haven't used this camera and this vlog. If the original was a vlog file format, maybe it's not applying the LUT when it's exporting it, and it's going back to the original format of vlog, which will look, washed out and green. So make sure it's applying that LUT. I would convert it first to Rec 709 and then tweak the Rec 709 from there to get it to that gamut from your vlog, and then try and output it as a LUT. So you're just outputting the LUT and then trying to apply the LUT to the footage in the camera? Is that what you're trying to do? Or are you outputting the footage in Panasonic format and then looking
No. All I did was I'm just in real time looking at myself in a monitor after I had loaded that LUT on the SD card.
Nigel, can you help a little bit?
Yeah, I was just going to say the X-Right now called the Calibrate Color Checker video, which is the one you want. I spent about 100 hours trying to do it the way that Alex did it, and then I spent $100, and it worked in about 7 seconds. So it's not a huge amount of money, particularly the small passport one, and it's very fast.
CJ, you wanted to add your voice?
Yeah, the other thing that I would say is whether you're doing it kind of freewheeling it or you have that color chart, you're the way that you're structuring your node tree in Resolve is still going to be the same. So you've got your color space transform on the way in, and I'll also put a color space transform on the way out so that I know what I'm coming from. I know what I'm trying to go to. You have kind of an intermediate space that allows you to do a little bit more work. The one thing I would caution is everything that you can do in Resolve is not necessarily what you can do in a LUT. So if you start to get into a bunch of secondary corrections and do a little bit of super fine tuning, those aren't always going to translate over in a LUT. But when you're sticking to your primary corrections and not getting too fancy, those are the things that are going to. Remember, we're just trying to shade it. We're not trying to grade it.
Alexander, you wanted to say a last word?
Yeah, and just the last thing too, I had maybe this was part of the problem, and I don't know if this works with LUTs again because I'm so new at this. But I did experiment with adding a node that added other effects on that color page, like halation, and I don't know, do those Resolve effects apply to a LUT?
I guess what I'd say, the very first thing I would do is just get to a point where you start adding nodes one operation at a time, and then get to a point where it does what you're expecting it to do. The mistake most people make when they start doing color correction is they want to do everything all at one time. And you want to just very carefully because it's easy to, get to a point where it's easy to load onto your camera. I don't know how easy that is right now for you. I know for me, I've got it with my Sony and with my Blackmagic ones, it's a very fast, it'll take me seconds to get it on there to see what it did. And I want to see what that looks like, and then I kind of error correct that. But I do all of that first, and then I'm gonna and make sure that I'm close. Then you start adding all the little things you want to do.
Hopefully that was all helpful. Fascinating discussion. Don't forget, if you've added questions, we're pretty much out of time for today. But if you put them in through the QR code system, they will stay persistent. They'll still be here tomorrow, so maybe we can get to them then. If you put them in through the standard Mukana system, they're going to go back to your notes field. So just to understand that, we'd like to address it when we have the time. Hey, thank you so much to everybody involved with this show. We always talk about our main constituencies, including those of you who are watching the show, our producers. Without your questions, we can't do this show every day. So thank you so much for all of the prompts you have essentially done to the live panel. The live panel is the next group. Unbelievable amounts of experience and expertise that they come here every day for free and share with the world. So huge thank you to every panelist who's involved today and who's been involved over the course of office hours, helping all of us learn. And finally, the amazing back-end crew, those people who are silently working in the back end to push the switches, to get things organized, to do all the lists and the organizational stuff that is required for any operation to take place. And so thank you to our back-end crew. That's pretty much everything we have for you today. The Talak Traversal, if you were to go around and get this expertise by visiting people, you would have traveled 52,000 miles today. That is 51,000 kilometers, 253 million bananas for scale. We'll be back tomorrow doing the same thing. Take care. Have a good evening.
9
keep
p.m.
forgetting
on
it.
a holiday. Let's do
Thanks
it.
for all those laborers in the back.
Holiday, the day that I get to work when no one calls me.
Right.
So that's no meetings and no calls. Yeah. There we go. All right.
There we
And
go.
there's always this text with our programmer when he's like, do you have 2 hours today? Our phones are going to be quiet.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right,
Well,
see you
nice
later.
to see you all. It was nice to have a good panel today.
Yeah.
Good to see everybody.
See everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Open rules on Saturday. I'm told in the back end if somebody's interested in sneaking in.